Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast series. Today, I've got Jay with me, and Jay's going to introduce himself now, and we're going to take it from there.
All right, how's it going, everybody? My name is Jay from, I'll say Kansas. Don't want to get any more specific than that. So I guess to open up with a background of like who I am, right? 30-year-old white male. The I don't really like labels, but I guess if you had to describe a label, it would be bisexual. But so that's kind of where I'm coming from with that. Veteran. I was in the military for 7 years. Just recently got out. It was an honorable discharge and everything, thank God. But anyway, so some background. Kind of grew up in. I didn't always live in Kansas. It was because I was in the army. I grew up in Michigan, Metro Detroit area. And so as far as like my experiences growing up with addictions and stuff, I know for a fact that my on my mother's side of the family, grandpa was an alcoholic. I never met him because he died like a month after I was born. But from what I've been told, that man would like slam a 30 rack of PBR like every day.
Oh, wow.
So I mean, yeah, his cirrhosis and all that got him.
Hmm.
Mother definitely has some issues with pills and stuff. And then my dad is also an alcoholic, and I know he was taking Suboxone, which, for those who might not know, Suboxone is a opioid replacement medication that they give to people who are addicted to whether it be like painkillers or heroin or whatever. It's like similar to methadone. And I knew he had those, but he never really talked about it. So I kind of saw the evidence, but I don't really know the whole story there. So it's been pretty freaking common in my family. And as I also suffer from an addiction to different stuff. To be clear, I'm my drugs of choice. Well, I used to drink a lot. I haven't touched alcohol in a couple months. Meth is the big one for me. Still using it, trying to get off of it. Yeah. So that's a little bit of so background, family. I'd say upper middle class, like wealthy, but not like Jeff Bezos wealthy. Kind of like dad owned a construction company more or less, and that brought in some good money. So it's not like I was living in poverty my entire life, but I would definitely say they were emotionally and verbally abusive. And uh, there's a couple times where I got hit and stuff, but I don't think it was that bad in regards to physical abuse.
So let's
Yeah, that's
pause.
pretty
Let's
much the
pause for a
background.
second there.
Uh huh.
Um, that went very quickly. We were talking.
Okay.
Yeah. So you talked about your grandfather
Mhm.
slamming 30 racks. Your mom was with. She had some pill problems. Your dad had
Mhm.
was taking Suboxone.
Mhm.
But then when you got into yourself, your childhood, kind of professional managerial class, like
Yes.
upper middle class, white collar, um, maybe not white collar, blue collar, but owner class of blue collar.
Yeah. Petty
Um,
bourgeois, I would say, would be the
yeah,
perfect phrase.
yeah, petty bourgeois. And I think in the opioid epidemic, we're seeing that class of, kind of upper middle class white people being affected. Um, the people that you quote unquote wouldn't expect.
Mhm.
Um, so what do you think that might have had an effect on uh, in terms of your upbringing there on kind of the class of drugs that you were ended up becoming dependent on?
Oh, that's a good question. So to be clear, like I don't talk to my parents anymore. They both got a lot of horrible stuff going on, but I don't want to associate with them anymore. But as far as that, like I agree, it is a thing, and I would almost say it's like the whole opioid epidemic. The only reason people are talking about it is because, like you said, like the white middle to upper class youth are getting hooked on it. So now suddenly everyone cares, right? But I don't know how long my dad has had Suboxone for. I knew he was on it like when I was in college, so that would be like 2008, 2011 time period. Then after college, I got out, so it wasn't so much the opiates that it was, but it's alcohol.
I
Like
gotcha.
everyone in high school, everyone drinks and stuff, and I kind of went overboard with it, and started out just like I think the first time I like consciously drank was I was like 12 or 13 playing some Xbox games or something, and thought I was the coolest dude in the world because I snuck one of those what do you call those little Mike's Hard Lemonade wine cooler things, and
Yeah, yeah.
so that was it. Got started. But then I liked how the effects felt and saw that my dad did it a lot, and all my peers were doing it at the time, and so I just kind of went overboard with it. And I never got to the point where I was like DT. So that's like if you're a severe alcoholic, like you start having seizures and your hand shakes and all that. I never got to that point, but I was definitely blackout like like 2 to 3 times a week in high school. So I'm talking like by this point like 15, 16 years old, getting blackout drunk 2 to 3 times a night. It was bad. And then the other one, as far as the meth goes, so I was prescribed Adderalls.
Mhm.
And again, I can get into more of this later, but to preview, right? I do
Mhm.
think that class of drugs, because I'm like legit diagnosed with ADHD, so that class of drugs does have some benefits for me. However, it's also an addictive thing, and having ADHD makes you more prone to addictions. So yeah, I just kind of started, instead of taking it as prescribed, I'd take like a half a pill more, and then you build up a tolerance, and you go to 2 to 3, and you're needing like 150 milligrams of Adderall, and then you're like, fuck it, let's go to meth. So I can get
Yep.
more into that later, but that's kind of how I got introduced to that particular substance.
Yeah. So you kind of the ADHD was a little bit you're gonna have addictive tendencies or compulsive tendencies anyway. So it was just like, all
Yeah.
right, well, I need it. I need more, more, more because it's basically meth light or legal meth for kids at that
Yeah,
point.
yeah, and it's funny. Meth actually has a brand name. Your doctor can technically prescribe it. It's a Schedule II narcotic. The name is Disoxin, and you could technically get that prescribed. I don't know anyone who's ever been prescribed it before, but yeah, it's yeah, it's an actual thing that you can get.
Yeah. So from going on, maybe timeline wise, 15,
Hmm.
16 years old, you're getting blackout drunk twice a week.
Yeah.
Um, where do you go from there?
Okay, so I got out of college 2011 time frame. Just kind of floated around. I took up a bunch of random ass jobs like carpet cleaning, substitute teacher, just kind of whatever I did. And then I met my now ex-wife at the time. We met over the internet, and I was real lonely at the time and kind of depressed. So like I went over to this attractive woman's house, and we ended up sleeping with each other, and it was game over from there for me because I was just like, oh man, yeah, I thought it was love, but anyways, anyways, about a year after that, getting married to her, and then started having kids. I got 2 kids. So yep, and then she ends up being diagnosed with gestational diabetes,
Mhm.
and then ends up being a permanent thing. So like I'm sitting here working some fucking throwaway job like $10 an hour cleaning carpets. No health insurance, not a whole lot going on with my life, and the relationship had been a lot of ups and downs too. Like got into arguments and shit. It never really escalated to the point of like physical violence, but we would have some pretty bad arguments, and she would like kick me out of the house and stuff, and it was
Mhm.
pretty bad. So I was kind of like homeless for a while too. But at this point though, I wasn't really using any of the harder drugs. I was just drinking a lot. But
Yep.
anyways, so no health insurance, shitty job. I got a stepchild. I got a son who's just born and another on the way. Right. So I was like, fuck it. What am I gonna do? Tried to go back to graduate school. That didn't work out because of some, I don't know, some administrative requirements of the university. Tried getting a job in like computer programming, finance, like something that would pay the bills and have health insurance. None of it was working out. So at that point, I was like, fuck this. I'm going to join the army. Like,
Mhm.
hey, you know what? The army's always hiring. And this was 2014 now. So yeah, then I joined the army. Obviously, you can't really use drugs when you're in the army, which is well, we can talk about that more, right? But
I
at the
mean,
time
I'd
though, I
love to
joined.
explore it if you'd like.
Yeah, yeah, we can talk about that in a bit, but I'm more than happy to. But when I first joined, I wasn't using it. And actually, when I did join, I mean, still drank because it's the army, right? And I'm an alcoholic, so it's like, yin and yang together. But yeah, like I didn't really touch around, not even pot or anything. I was pretty determined to get in and make a better life for my family.
Cool. I mean, well, not cool, but like
Yeah.
interesting
Yeah.
because you're saying like you joining the army is like and being an alcoholic is yin and yang.
Yeah.
So it's like, what? Why do you say that?
Okay. So for those who might not be familiar with the military, drinking culture is huge, right? And I have my thoughts about it. I think alcohol is personally the most socially and physically harmful drug of them all. That's just my personal opinion. But in the military, it's encouraged. And when I came in 2014, right, obviously you're not going to be having any kind of alcohol in basic training. And then after your basic training, you go to like a AIT, where I would compare it to like a low security prison. Like you got to check in with mommy and daddy drill sergeant every night and formations. And I mean, you can read more about that, but it's pretty authoritarian, like all encompassing environment. You always got eyes on you, but people manage to sneak drinks, and I was one of them. I got caught that way. I got an Article 15 for that, which is basically it's called non-judicial punishments. Your commander says, "Hey, I caught you messing up, but instead of taking you to court martial for a relatively minor offense, in the grand scheme of things, I'm going to just give you this extra duty and take a little bit of your pay." So yeah, there was so, but yeah, reason I said that army and alcohol are like yin and yang, and they just go together is it's just embedded in the culture. I mean, if you they have these things called balls where it's like a formal, like wear your dress uniform and all that, and those things are just like, oh, it's everybody just getting hammered out of their minds. And it's a friend of mine, Hannah, actually described it as like a psychological thing because there's a lot of mass punishment in the army. They don't really hit people like they did back in the day now, but there's definitely a lot of mental and verbal abuse and manipulation of, like, messing with your head and all that. And some people are power tripping. So you get all this tension built up, and then it comes to a point where you get together, whether that's with like your buddies in the barracks on a Friday night or it's at a unit ball or whatever. You all get like blackout piss drunk, and it's kind of like the cathartic release. So it's like build up the tension all week, and then you go to the weekend, you drink to oblivion, and then you purge it out, and you're ready for the next week. And it's like a repeating cycle of abuse. So to answer your question, that's why I said that.
Yeah, I mean, that's an incredibly interesting answer, and I've got buddies that are in or that were in. It's kind of like the poverty draft
Yeah,
is the way it's been explained.
it is 100% right.
I'm from a pretty white trash area, and it's you either go to a state school, you don't
Mhm.
leave the town, or you kind of go into the military.
Yep.
And the situation that you were in, you had
Hmm.
no health insurance. Your wife was just diagnosed with diabetes. Um, you had a stepchild and a biological child and another child on the way, and it was like,
Hmm.
what is my option? And your
Right.
option was being drafted into the military, whether you liked it or not.
Hmm. And I guess because military background too is like my dad was in the army for he just did a 4-year stint as a military policeman. He was stationed at Fort Irwin, which when I was growing up, I was like, oh, okay. But Fort Irwin, for those who don't know, is home to, it's called the National Training Center, which is like the closest, most realistic simulation you'll ever get to like a full on war between like China and the United States, or Russia and the United States. Like it's pretty intense. But anyways, it's in the middle of the desert in this town called Barstow. It's like 40 minutes away from the local Walmart, literally in the middle of the desert. Nothing going on there. And he was there with an MP, is a military policeman. And I always ask him like, "Hey, Dad, like, why did you join if you hated it?" He's like, "Oh, no, they gave me enough money to buy a Camaro with my bonus." I was like, "Oh, cool." So that's kind of another thing. I was like, "Oh, well, Dad got, he got a pretty nice bonus. Let me see what I can sign up for."
Hmm. So that is kind of the motivation to get you in, but like you're in this culture of alcohol and being abused by the system that you're in,
Hmm.
and that's just leading to a spiral. I can see it.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Now, as far as the day to day of the army goes, I haven't really found many shows or media in general that portrays it accurately, but I think anyone who's been in more than a minute will agree with me that the United States Army, and I guess you could probably expand it to the whole military, is the easiest job in the world. Like, as long as you show up to work on time wearing the right clothes that your boss told you to wear, and you just do what you're told, you don't have to do it correctly, you don't even have to put a big effort into it. You just, look like you're doing what you're told. It's impossible to get fired. You know, like you got to mess up pretty badly to get fired from the army. So it's an easy job, and I think that's what keeps a lot of people in. And like my wife being ex-wife now being a diabetic, having all the kids and everything. My son actually has he's on the autism spectrum, so like
Hmm.
helping him get services for all that. That's kind of how they rope you in once you're in. Is like that. It's called TRICARE. It's basically socialized medicine. I wouldn't say the military is a socialist institution. It's far from it, but that aspect of it is very much like, yeah, it's a huge pull for people.
Yeah, and can you speak more, now that we've kind of laid the groundwork for you
Uh huh.
getting into the military and what the culture is like? Can you speak more to what your time was like in the military and basically the meat and potatoes of what we're talking about today?
Okay, yeah, I can absolutely. So join in 2014, basic training. It takes me to like early 2015, and then I go to AIT. My MOS is real small, so I don't want to give that away. It was Signal. I was in the Signal Corps. So for those who might not know, the Signal Corps is like Army communications. So my specific was setting up routers and switches. Terminals that connect to like other terminals through line of sight or satellite shots or whatever. The encryption and decryption of communications, like all that kind of thing. If it involves radios or internet, like I probably had my fingers in it. That's more or less what I did the whole time I was in. That was my
Gotcha.
original signed MOS, but so yeah, basically get to the unit at the end of 2015 because my AIT was really long. It was like 9 months, which I might be like one of the longest, if not the longest, in the army. It was pretty intense.
So
But
what's an AIT?
yeah. And, oh, so yeah, an AIT is Advanced Individual Training. It's like job school, like
Gotcha.
vocational school for whatever your assigned job is. But yeah. So, anyways, finish the job training AIT. Get to the unit at end of 2015, and things are pretty chill then. I'm just kind of getting used to it. And I'm like, this isn't so bad. Like, this is like the easiest job I've ever fucking had. I could do this for 20 years. Like, I want to be clear. Like, I didn't really believe in it. I didn't believe, like, oh, America number one. But I was like, hey, like, all I'm fucking doing every day is sweeping and mopping a floor, or spray painting something on the side of a truck. Like I'm not fucking the imperialist pig that's murdering children. That spoiler alert. Ends up that no matter what your job in the army is, whether you intend to do that or not, that is what you end up doing. I'll get more to that in a bit, though. So, anyways, funny story. Now it's like summer 2016, right? About May, June time frame. I'm like, hey, I don't want any more kids, and I like having sex, so I'm gonna go get a vasectomy. Plus, I can get some of those Percocets, right? Percocet, like the opiate painkiller, it's pretty strong. And then, so I go to the surgery. I have to do the snip, and you have to go to like a class before you do that, and then you're put on a waiting list. And but they called me and they're like, "Hey, this other dude backed out. Like, you're next on the list. You want to come do it tomorrow?" So I go tell like, "Hey, let me go ask my chain of command." So I go ask my NCO. That's a non-commissioned officer, like your manager, more or less, for the enlisted. So I'm
Yep.
like,
Okay.
"Hey, sergeant, can I have the surgery?" And the command approves it anyways. And they're like, "Oh, by the way, you get 3 days of recovery, and then you're back on a profile, which is kind of like it's like a limited duty, like outlines, hey, you had a surgery, so no lifting up heavy objects for like however many days is what a profile is. But anyways, they're like, hey, you're on profile. After your 3 days, you're on profile. You come back. By the way, you're going to Alpha Company to go to Iraq." And I was like, oh, okay, like shit's about to get real, right? So, do all your train up and everything. And then we actually left on New Year's Eve of 2016 to go to Iraq. But you don't fly straight into Iraq, right? You fly into Kuwait, which is very hot. I think it's like the hottest country in the world. Hung out there for 2 weeks, and then I flew off to Iraq. I was stationed at Al Assad Air Base, which is, if you recall, from early in 2020 before the coronavirus really popped off, when the big thing was like Iran and General Soleimani.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep, it was basically the same base that the Iranians shot the missiles at was like the one I was at. I
Mhm.
never went through anything quite that terrifying, but as you can tell, that base likes to get bombed a lot and shit. So we would deal with mortars and stuff, and
Mhm.
it's kind of weird because you eventually just almost get used to it because there's like this alarm that goes off, right? And it has the most distinct sound, and like even to this day, 4 years after the fact, I'll still get freaked the fuck out if I hear it. But
Mhm.
the first couple times you hear like, "Oh my god, the end of the world," but then eventually, because the mortars don't always land where they're intended, so half the time they land in like the airfield where there's freaking nobody there, right? And so you just kind of like, oh, okay, this alarm, like, shut the fuck up, let me get back to sleep. But yeah, there was a couple times where it would be real close, and I could like feel it shaking on the walls and everything.
Mhm.
There was one time that was really bad where we were sitting under a bunker for like a solid 3 hours, and like, when I say a bunker, it's basically like a small concrete tunnel that's maybe
Mhm.
about 3 feet high, and you got a bunch of people packed in there, shoulder to shoulder. There's like bird shit all over the floor because we like lived in a decommissioned helicopter hangar. It was fun times, but yeah, you're just sitting there like, I mean, at this point there was so much shit going on and like so much sounds. Like normally you can kind of tell like if it's outgoing or incoming based on the sounds, but like there was just so much explosions. I was like, what the fuck is going on right now? And thank
Yeah,
God
that
nobody
probably
got
messed
hurt
your head
there.
up a little bit.
Yeah, it certainly did, and there was some other incidents too. I'll go ahead and throw up a content warning for this one because it is a bit graphic, but I was doing something in the medical area, like putting them out with that, right? And they rushed this dude in, and they're like, "Hey, man, like we got to do an operation. You got to get the fuck out." And I like look over, and there's a dude with his fucking like leg just blown off, and it looked like I really can't even like cook skirt steak to this day or flank steak or whatever it's called because it kind of looks like when your leg is severed. But anyways, that image kind of like burned in my head, and it's just
Yeah.
like the smells and everything. There's a lot of stuff, but those were the two incidents that most stuck out to me. But yeah, it was nobody I knew died or anything. I never got like injured in combat or anything. I by no means am I Rambo. I don't want to give anyone that impression. But I did still see and experience some things that messed with my head a lot on deployment.
Yeah. I think that's, something that's kinda common with people that are deployed and then come back. It's difficult to adjust.
Yes, and the other thing that bugged me was, like I said, I worked on the internet a lot, right? So, what do they use the internet for in Iraq? Well, they use it to launch. They have a system called HIMARS, which is like basically a truck with a missile launcher on the back of it that shoots surface to surface, like long range missiles that just completely obliterate, any life form in a square radius of however many feet, right? And they also drones, right? Drones are the big one. That's how America does most of its war nowadays. And the 7 countries we have combat operations going on in. So all the drone feeds would be piped through the internet that I built. And then it was weird because like the contractors would be like, "Hey, dude, check this out," and they would like show you a video like, "Yeah, dude, check this. We smoked this dude," and his like arms are flying across the screen. And I saw this like I couldn't even begin to put a number on it. It was like day in and day out. I just saw so many similar videos of just wanton disregard for life on the
Mhm.
part of the army that was just like there's one time they just blew up an entire fucking apartment complex. Like, how do you know there wasn't people in there? Like even if there weren't people in there, you just destroyed the homes of multiple families. Like, you really think they're gonna, they might think the Islamic State's looking a little tempting to join at that point, right?
Mhm.
So that's another big thing that messed me up. But yeah, those were basically the three things I would say from deployment as far as that goes that kind of messed me up. And also the whole, like just wife cheating on you and all that, and like relationship issues. And it was just a number of things, really. Yeah,
So
that deployment.
there's this constellation of things that's coming together here. It's like you kind of were forced to go into the army because you needed the insurance and the money.
Right.
You weren't really expecting to get deployed to Iraq. Um,
It's a
I
bad
mean,
assumption, by the way, if anyone's still in or listening to this. Bad assumption.
yep, yep. Because you thought to yourself, from what I remember you saying, was, "Oh, I could do this for 20 years,
Hmm.
just working on internet and cables for the military, and then boom, you're in Iraq after 2 weeks in Kuwait, on a layover, basically, and
Hmm.
then your base is just getting mortar shot at it day in and day out.
Yep.
You're cleaning or installing something, and in a medical bay, and they just rush a dude whose leg is blown off in there.
Hmm.
And then these contractors are showing you videos of them just blatantly destroying things, like
Hmm.
war hawkishly destroying things and
Yeah.
disregarding human life.
Making a joke out of it. Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, the weight of all that stuff must have been soul crushing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was doing some stupid shit when I was in Iraq because obviously, they're not. It's one, it's an Islamic country, and two, it's the army deployed, so you're not going to be drinking alcohol there. But I found a workaround, which is they had this shit. This is just to give you an example of like this is where the shit started ramping up.
Yep.
But yeah, I would go and get O'Doul's non-alcoholic beer, which it actually has like what 0.5% alcohol. So I was able to somehow or another get like a wine cork, a 2 liter bottle of soda, and so I would like pour the O'Doul's into the 2 liter and then get the wine cork, and then get like a bicycle pump with the little the little needle thing it has that you put into
Hmm.
the tire. So I would take that into the cork and I would pump a bunch of air into this 2 liter with O'Doul's, right? And what that did was, as the, depending on the environmental pressure, it can actually cause the alcohol to vaporize and separate from the beer portion of it. So you get this alcohol vapor like a bong, just like rip off the thing and you get drunk for like 10 minutes. It's also really bad for you, so don't try that. But because
So,
your liver doesn't filter it. But yeah, it's I was doing shit like that.
how often were you doing stuff like that?
Honestly, I only did it a couple times, and then I kind of got skeeved out. Like, I feel like a fucking junkie right now. So I did it a couple times, but I felt like that was foreshadowing because,
Hmm.
like, that's pretty. Now that I think back on it, like that's a pretty desperate fucking length to go to change your alter your consciousness and get messed up.
Yeah, yeah. So we're talking about going down this road with you,
Hmm.
and it was foreshadowing for what?
Okay, so yeah, when I started getting back to the United States, first thing I did, like before I said hi to my kids and everything, was go to like the gas station and get beer. And from from that point on, it was just like I did in high school, getting blackout drunk a couple times a week. Like skipping out on PT because I was hungover, but I was also good at my job and just got promoted to sergeant. And well, the way the army actually works is the more rank you have, the less trouble you get in for minor shit. So, I was able to kind of take advantage of that, and like, oh, I overslept PT or whatever, and stuff like that. But as far as the drugs go and everything, that really started off with the pandemic. So I'm not going to bore you with the whole career, but I ended up PCSing to Fort Riley
What's
in
PCSing?
2018. PCSing is like when the military says, "Hey, you're moving from this base to another base, and we'll pay for you to move all your stuff."
Gotcha.
Yeah. So yeah, I basically moved Fort Riley in 2018. My marriage is pretty much in shambles at this point, and in fact, it was like got there in 2018 August, and by December of 2018, she was just like, "Nah, I've had enough of your shit," and kicked me out. And I was just like, "I'm not trying to start anything." As just like, I'll go live with my buddy, and then yeah. So basically, 28, and this whole time, I'm trying not to get bogged down in the little details, but it's like you were saying earlier, like I'm just having time to decompress. I'm not like caught up in it every day, and it's some time to really think, really think about what was going on. And
Mhm.
then in 2019, I actually went to Poland. Because we had the whole Operation Atlantic Resolve, like they say, quote unquote, deter Russian aggression, which I can get into that another time, but it's bullshit. But anyways, I was in Poland, and in Poland the alcohol was really cheap, and yeah, I just started just like took it to the next level, just like getting blackout drunk probably every other night, if not every night.
That concludes part 1 of episode 3 with Jay. And we're going to find out next episode what happens in Poland. Where does he go from here? What is he doing now? And what does his future look like? Well, we're going to find out in part 2 of episode 3.